How are we feeling on a Thursday morning, everybody? Welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and in this video, I'll be diving into my top 30 running back tiers and rankings for Week 6 fantasy football. I'll be talking through the top 30 players again that have some level of startability here at various tiers, of course, for this week's game. So, as always, we'll be diving right into today's episode. But if you're new around here, make sure to drop down, smash that subscribe button, and turn the bell on as well. By the time you're watching this, it's possible we may have passed the 5,000 subscriber marker. Thank you guys so much for everything you've done for me for the past few seasons here and the last couple of weeks as we've marched towards this milestone. I'm super incredibly appreciative for you guys, everything you've done for the community, and this is just as much a big deal for you guys as it is for me, because the more support we have here at the channel, of course, the more I'm able to make this style content for you guys and get you more in-depth information in a variety of ways. So thanks so much again, you guys. Let's dive into today's episode and break down our tiers for this week. All right, here we go. So by now, hopefully you guys are familiar with the tier list format that we use here at SFS, but if not, that is entirely okay. I'll break them down real quick for you. The elite running back ones, these are the best players for this week's matchup, the players that I think are the biggest difference makers in games, at least at the top of things here. The strong running back ones are guys I'm confident in as being top 12 finishers this week, but of course don't have the ceiling to finish in my eyes as one of those top 4 or 5 names for the week. The bubble running back ones tier here, these are going to be guys that could either go either way here, boom or bust options, if you will. A guy that could definitely finish in the top 12, but if things don't go right, potentially could slide down here into that next range. Rinse and repeat for elite running back 2s, strong running back 2s, bubble running back 2s, and then the RB3s territory are the guys that are in that 24 to 25 plus range as we make our way towards 30. Guys that you don't love to have in your lineups, of course, here, but at the end of the day can get the job done. So as always, if you're new around here, we do offer complete rankings for each position on my website, sizzlefantasy.com. In the description of today's episode, that can be found. You can go check that out there for just over $1 a day. Get yourself access to bi-weekly rest of season rankings for all positions here in fantasy football. Lineup advice coming straight from the horse's mouth here myself. I will set your lineup for you for just over $1 a week. And then we've also got, like I said, all of these tiers, or excuse me, all of these rankings for quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, receivers, and defenses for every single week here. So go check that stuff out if you're interested in it, but let's dive into the elite running back ones tier. All right, really quick note before I break these players down. We have the Lions, the Raiders, the Titans, and the Texans out on bye for this week, so you're not going to see their names in today's tiers list. Of course, DeAndre Swift / Jamal Williams, important notes there. Dameon Pierce, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, all critical names that we don't have access to here in Week 6 fantasy. But Saquon versus Baltimore this week, I guess I should note this as well, left to right for numeric rankings if that's how you're looking through things today. Saquon Barkley versus Baltimore, simply the central piece of the Giants offense right now. He is the motor pulling this thing in New York at this point in time. He's got a very high ceiling with his explosive play, and this, is one of the NFL offenses that uniquely is not really a true passing spread option team. You've got, or not an option team, but a spread offense looking to distribute the ball a high volume of times through the air. They want to get their star playmaker, really their best offensive weapon, the football, as much as they possibly can. Here had a slight shoulder issue against the Packers in London last week. However, it isn't expected to be a serious concern here. He's expected to be full forced here for this matchup. Austin Eckler vaulting himself back into the elite territory here after last week. Now, still don't really truly have an answer for the goal line usage. There's still been puzzling Josh Kelly sightings, and we've had Sony Michel sightings throughout the year, but Austin Eckler is just a beast, and if he's going to continue to produce in the fashion that he has on just his normal touches in this offense, he's going to be an awesome player. And he had his career high in rushing yardage last week in a big matchup for this team. He takes on Denver this week on Monday Night Football. Russell Wilson reportedly dealing with a shoulder issue. We'll talk about that later. But look at what Josh Jacobs did to this unit, the averages he had on the ground in Week 4. Eckler is a better player and, expectedly a better offense here, led by a better quarterback, to say the least. So I expect the opportunities to be there, the efficiency to be there, and of course, if he's going to keep scoring from 10 yards out, he's going to have the opportunity to put up some of these monstrous weekly lineup performances. Nick Chubb here taking on the Patriots, the current RB1 in scoring, my RB3 for this week. Love me some Nick Chubb. Chubb. He's been doing just ridiculous things. The offensive line play, his ability to consistently and frequently get to the second and third levels of the defense. He had a roughly 50-yard touchdown last week down the right sideline, and it was one of the great weaving and winding change of direction plays I've seen all year, just with his ability to make players miss in open space. He's explosive as hell in the open field, in such a weapon for NFL offenses. So the only drawback I have for him in this matchup, as always, he's not catching passes. It shows his efficiency, though. He's able to offset that at a great level. His touchdown conversion rate has been phenomenal this season as well, having a nose for the end zone. But the one concern I do have for him in this matchup in particular against New England is Bill Belichick. I think that despite the fact that this game is in Cleveland, Bill's going to do some things to really disturb Jacoby Brissett. Don't forget, Jacoby Brissett started his career as a New England Patriot, actually started a couple games for this team with Tom Brady out due to suspension and then Jimmy Garoppolo getting injured back in the day. So he knows the strengths and weaknesses of Brissett here. I expect Cleveland to try and keep this game on the ground, and I think they know that if they don't turn the football over and have unforced errors, they can win this contest. However, Bill likes to take away the best threat for the opposing team, and this is clearly Nick Chubb in this instance. So we'll see how things go about it here for the Cleveland offense in Week 6. And then Christian McCaffrey against the Rams. This is the second lowest expected scoring total of the week here. However, CMC is the only way this team has to move the football. I've said it basically every week now. You're also transitioning from Baker Mayfield, who was in a walking boot with a sprain, to his ankle, expected to miss 2 to 6 weeks here. You're moving to PJ Walker. So could be rusty off the bench here, hasn't had starting experience in some time. He has had some starts for this Panthers team in particular. Actually looked nice at times in some of those games, but still expect to be a low-scoring, kind of disastrous defensive shootout, or excuse me, not a shootout. I guess I was going for a shutout there, but this isn't going to be a shutout. This is just going to be kind of a corner TV game that's going to be unentertaining to watch. McCaffrey will move the ball for this team, but at the same time, I do think that we have to manage our expectations a little bit, of course. His ceiling is sky high as always, but in terms of the overall offensive output, this is a Christian McCaffrey and Cooper Kupp game, and then everyone else you kind of just forget about. All right, next up here, starting with our running back 5, Leonard Fournette. We've got ourselves quite the meaty, strong running backs 1 tier for this week. Actually, our running backs 5 through 11 fall in this category, so 7 total names. You'll see the bubble RB1 territory be pretty small for this week. Starting out with Lenny, though, 8.5-point favorites on the road at Pittsburgh. If this was a home game at Raymond James Stadium, that would be a bigger number, and the reason that is important here is because the expected game script is going to dictate to an extent how much opportunity a running back has in a matchup if things go according to that expected game script here. I thoroughly expect Tampa Bay to dominate Pittsburgh and control the tempo and overall pace of this game. For me, that means a lot of Leonard Fournette and maybe a healthy dosage of Rachaad White in this game late as well. He did have a 30-point game in Week 5. However, his snaps have been down the last couple of weeks because, as I mentioned, Rachaad White has been seeing a growing snap count percentage for this football team. Lenny's been in the 60s in terms of that overall, number being out there on the field, which is also kind of a common precedent here for Dalvin Cook the last few weeks. At number 6 here, taking on Miami, had his first, breakout game of the season, a 25-point contest against Chicago and half PPR scoring. But what I've noticed is a common trend here for Cook so far this season is that in games where he doesn't average 4.5 yards per carry or more, he's struggling to reach 10 points in half PPR scoring. So you need that level of efficiency because with that snap count going down, trying to keep him fresher, use Alex Madison as a little bit of a hedge against injury for Cook here, who has never played more than 14 games in an NFL season. That's ultimately impacting his usage and his workload on a per-game basis, so something to be mindful of here, though. I do expect Minnesota to control this game against a Skylar Thompson-led Dolphins team, though, so could be a favorable game script for the Vikings offense. Jonathan Taylor here taking on Jacksonville, expected to play this week. However, the reason he's not in the elite running backs 1 tier is I'm just managing my expectations, plain and simple. Coming off ankle injuries, we've seen this really plague the receiver position this year. You'll see in the receivers tiers, I've got T. Higgins pretty low this week, solely off the fact that he played 10 snaps in Week 5 on Sunday Night Football with an ankle issue for himself. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Gabe Davis are other notable players to be plagued by ankle injuries this season. So if he's not cutting sharp, getting a full work count, all that stuff, it's going to be concerning and impact his overall fantasy play here. So again, managing expectations there. Alvin Kamara at 8 here had 29 touches in arguably one of his best matchups against Seattle last week of the entire season. That's just a god-awful defense. They are the 31st ranked scoring defense, so second to last behind the Detroit Lions. He had 194 scrimmage yards, and heading into the week, he said this is the healthiest he's felt in a couple of years now, and you kind of saw that at play here, and hopefully that's a thing going forward. But this is an interesting game against Cincinnati. I'm not really sure how to get a good feel for this one. I think it could go a variety of ways, especially with the impact of the T. Higgins situation. On paper, it seems like Cincinnati should blow this team out, but they've been struggling, especially up front. The offensive line patchwork's getting a little bit better here, but I could see this being kind of a hairy, close contest for each team here, and Alvin Kamara just having kind of a steady top 12 game, but nothing too crazy here. Cincinnati's run stop is actually a little bit underrated in my opinion, so I expect and hope that Kamara will do some nice things through the air, though. Breece Hall, moving into my strong running back ones tier for the first time this season, taking on my Green Bay Packers this week, 7-point underdogs at Lambeau. However, the current RB6 for this fantasy season, I don't care. I don't think that my Packers have the offensive juice and explosiveness to get out to a big lead and sustain it against the Jets here, and we saw this last 2 weeks against a big spread against the Patriots, a big spread against the Giants. They went to overtime in one game, lost the other, and this is just not a team that I think culturally has the flair to really have a strong bounce back week and crush the Jets. So for what's a feisty and very talented New York Football Jets team, I think they hang around in this contest. I don't think they ever really get phased out of the run game based off of game script here, and I think Breece Hall has 4 full quarters of solid and complete opportunities for production. So for a guy who's been catching passes like a madman, making big runs, he had 197 scrimmage yards last week. I love this opportunity, and I think he can do some really nice things here. Now, Aaron Jones, my RB10 for this week. Some of you guys have been critical of my rankings of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon rather low in the last few weeks of this season, but look, I mean, more often than not, I've been proven right here. This has been an offense that, again, just doesn't have the firepower to really get high production numbers out of these players, and right now, with Aaron Jones not being a true workhorse because A.J. Dillon, although he did have a season-low snap count percentage last week, is factored in, that is impacting both of their fantasy values. So, he's had one 20-touch game this season, that being Aaron Jones here, and that at the end of the day, it's just not going to cut it a variety of times here. So he's extremely efficient, extremely talented, can get in the end zone. It's kind of a situation with Austin Eckler where there's just been a limited amount of goal line opportunities for Jones. He's getting red zone touches, but once they get like inside the 5, they tend to defer to A.J. Dillon, but even he hasn't seen many opportunities in that area of the field because the offense just isn't moving the football. So they are, but they're in the bottom third of the league right now. I think I actually wrote down, they are 22nd, so very close to the bottom of the league in terms of scoring offense. So very close to being a bottom third team in that category. Again, my explanation for rating my own hometown team here and their running backs low in fantasy. So clearly no bias there. Ramondre Stevenson here, against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Look, he's going to be a workhorse this week without Damian Harris. Now, he isn't the most elite physical specimen in terms of his explosiveness in the open field. He's not the most flashy player in the world. Sometimes he reminds me a little bit of an Eddie Lacy, just kind of a bigger, thicker back, plowing through people, catching some passes out in space here and there, and just being kind of a well-rounded asset here. I think that we saw last week, 25 carries, 160 yards. He can get the job done. This is a battering ram, a guy who can be used in the goal line as well. So in this game, like I said, I think both the Browns and the Patriots should expect coming into this contest, if you don't force errors and have self-inflicted mistakes here, you should win this game. So I expect a heavy dosage, of running the football from each of these offenses, and that should lead to a very, very solid fantasy floor from Ramondre here in Week 6. A smaller tier for the bubble running back ones this week, just Joe Mixon and Jeff Wilson Jr. Now, the reason I have Joe Mixon rated so low this week is because of some inefficiencies up front, just for his ability to deliver a high yards per carry number, as well as the fact that this offensive line, while they are improving, is still, having some growing pains here, just based off of the production we've seen from Mixon. And of course, obviously in pass protection, it's been somewhat of a nightmare for Joe Burrow, but also I'm still having an ounce of respect for the Saints defense against the run. They haven't been as good as years past this season. However, they are still an above average group in that category. So for Joe Mixon, only having averaged 4 or more yards per carry once this season in 5 tries, the 20% conversion rate this past week actually was the first time against Baltimore at 5.57. That is encouraging, but I am going to pump my expectations for this game just a little bit here. But over the course of the season, we did have him as a buy low this week. I really like his outlook going forward. Jeff Wilson Jr. here taking on the Atlanta Falcons. 5.5-point favorites for San Francisco on the road. Love this matchup potential game script scenario. Now, the Falcons aren't going to give up. They're going to keep fighting throughout this contest, but San Fran is an offensive, physical, power run identity football team. And for a guy in Jeff Wilson, who, unlike Joe Mixon, has averaged 4 or more yards per carry in each of his starts this year, that being weeks 2 through 5 here, I expect much of the same. They're a brutal team up front to deal with, and I just expect another steady performance out of him in this week's games. Into the elite running back 2s tier now. I've got Ken Walker and Miles Sanders as my RBs 14 and 15 here, so we did go 1 over the 12 running back cap for the RB1s this week. However, you'll see this position group is fairly top-heavy, especially once we get to the fringe running back 2s tier. For this week's games, just missing 4 quality running backs to buy this week is going to have a big impact. I've actually got one league where I have, and it's my fault, but at the end of the day, it's fine because the team is 4-1 right now. I do have Derrick Henry, I have Dameon Pierce, and DeAndre Swift / Jamal Williams all on one team. So that's going to be an absolute brutal thing for me to deal with here in week 6. Hopefully I can overcome that. We've got guys like Ken Walker coming off the bench and stuff like that. The Ken Walker versus Arizona is my RB14 for this week. He has a massive ceiling. His one-cut ability and explosiveness in space is so vital to this team. And believe it or not, Seattle is the 7th ranked scoring offense right now, so they're moving the football up and down the field and being highly effective when they have the ball in Geno Smith's hands, which Pete Carroll had this absolutely dumb comment today where he was like, Drew Lock is nipping at the heels of Geno Smith to be this team's starter. And I'm like, dude, shut up. I mean, Geno Smith's balling out right now. He still hasn't written back. Come on, man. But besides the point here, Ken Walker, 7th ranked scoring offense, huge ceiling, big playmaker, improved offensive line from 2021. I like the situation here. In a divisional game, this should be a close one. I think you'll have an opportunity to run the ball for the entire 4 quarters of this contest. Miles Sanders versus Dallas here. This is one where I just have to trust the offense to produce. This is a tough matchup. Dallas's defensive front is extremely potent and really hard to block. Eagles do have some injuries up front on their offensive line, so all tough stuff to have to overcome and deal with here. However, Sanders is coming off a season high 74% snap count percentage in week 5 against Arizona. He just got 2 bad breaks. The goal line opportunities both went to Jalen Hurts last week and left Miles Sanders hanging there, which kind of sucked, but that's the nature of the beast of this offense. That's how things are going to go here, and things that you're going to have to deal with. Additionally, he has had an 80+% opportunity share the last 2 weeks, so that's counting the actual touches he's gotten in this backfield. He's been very, very effective. So while the numbers didn't back it up last week, the opportunities did. More often than not, things will pan out here, and I'm expecting another solid game from him against Dallas this week. Alright, so I said the drop-off would be pretty steep here at some point during the running back 2's tier segment here. This is the point where I do still have some liking for these players. We actually have Melvin Gordon as our kind of last cusp must-start running back for this week, but the bubble running back 2s, as I said, are pretty brutal after this tier. So Melvin this week has got a matchup on Monday night against the Chargers. Their run stop has been atrocious to start this year and very, very inconsistent for this team. So for me, in a game where Russell Wilson's reportedly dealing with some shoulder discomfort, they might not want to just cut him loose and throw the football all over the yard. I think, a heavy dosage of run game is in order for this team. So obviously a benefit, more opportunities for Melvin Gordon, unless he coughs it up and puts it on the ground, should be in a pretty good position there. David Montgomery here, my RB17 for this week versus Washington this evening. You'll be seeing this at earliest on Thursday morning. So playing the Commanders on Thursday Night Football on Prime Video. He had 16 touches in his return from his knee issue last week. That actually exceeded my expectations. I was a bit skeptical of him. Had 82 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown and bounced right back with a 72% snap share for this offense. So props to David Montgomery. This is a very strict run-first offense, protecting Justin Fields and not putting him in harm's way. And then Raheem Mostert here, expected to have another start with Skylar Thompson, as this team's starting quarterback, their 3rd stringer. Sounds like Bridgewater is going to be in concussion protocol again. Tua has been ruled out for a 2nd consecutive game by Coach Mike McDaniel. So, Raheem balled out the last couple of weeks here, especially last week in terms of overall scoring, but his last 2 games have been his 2 highest rushing attempt performances of the season. So keep an eye on that. Maybe make it a 3rd straight week of going 15+ touches on the ground. Very efficient, very explosive when he's healthy. definitely a lineup-worthy player here. Alrighty, into the bubble running back 2s tier now. So J.K. Dobbins, I think that a lot of you guys got a little bit excited about J.K.'s production early coming back from his injury, the ACL, of course. Now, I do want to pump the brakes a little bit. We saw the production falter last week. In the 3 games we've had J.K. back since returning against the Buffalo Bills, we have had the opportunity to see him have a 43%, a 50%, and a 40% snap share in respective games. So he is definitely not a player being used in a workhorse fashion, a very touchdown dependent, at times extremely efficient when he breaks a big run, but a running back that's struggling here against the Giants with an underrated defensive front. I don't know how I feel about this matchup. Plain and simple, like I said, it's a boom or bust thing. It could go either way. That's why he's in the bubble here. He could fall down into RB3 territory or worse, or even potentially skyrocket himself up into a higher status if he finds some goal line work in this game. So it all comes down to game script. He is very dependent on how the nature of the contest unfolds here. That's why we're a little bit hesitant on him there. At our RB20 for this week, we've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, he came back to earth last week. He had himself a lower snap count percentage, bumping back down to 43% after having a season-high 56% in week 4. The touchdown production is going to be something that I think is unpredictable here. He's been a guy that has gotten reception involvement. He's had rushing opportunities. It's been kind of scattered all over the map. He had some of the most broken touchdowns I've ever seen, like the Patrick Mahomes spinning and, flicking in the end zone here, looking like a basketball player. All kinds of nuts stuff going on here for CEH. So he's got Buffalo this week. It's the highest expected scoring total of any game by 8 points. That is the reason that I do have him still in this category. Hopefully you're able to sell high on him because, again, I do think it is going to be inconsistent to project that touchdown projections or production there. Najee Harris here, my 21st ranked running back. This has become such a tire fire for him from a fantasy perspective in Pittsburgh. Their offensive line can't block. Their offense and quarterback as a whole struggle to move the football, and they almost never get into quality scoring looks for Najee to get goal line carries and opportunities in that fashion. We had him as a sit candidate last week and ultimately had to walk out this past week and have a 4.5 point game in half PPR. So another brutal matchup here against Tampa Bay. They're 8.5 point underdogs at home. Game script could be a problem here, and we could see Najee let us down again. Etienne and J-Rob will going to go 2 for 1 here. Etienne, some are projecting a backfield flip here between these two players. I'm a Travis Etienne fan, so I would love to see it. J-Rob's, got a piece in my heart as well. He's a very, very nice player, and has done some nice things for us in his tenure as the Jags starting running back, but I'm going to pump the brakes on the whole backfield flipping conversation. The game scripts have been very unique for this Jags team the last 2 weeks, where Travis has posted a 50+% snap share in both of those games. J-Rob below 50% in both of those contests. They've been trailing. They've had opportunities where they've really struggled late in games to convert first downs and consecutively move the chains. And they've needed a pass-catching running back on the field or a more explosive player to get that job done. So I'm not ready to go there in the sense that Etienne has taken this backfield over. Because of that clouded vision of this backfield, though, I've had to move J-Rob down my tiers a little bit just out of a lack of faith in his overall usage. Now, I still believe he's the top goal line option for this team. I think if they get inside the 5-yard line, you're going to see J-Rob in the backfield, not Travis Etienne. So Etienne owners, don't get your hopes up too much here. But same for J-Rob owners. I mean, if he's going to lose first and second down touches to Etienne, who's been the more efficient back the last couple of weeks, that could be problematic for him as well. And then Devin Singletary, same issue as CEH here. Both running backs are undersized. Neither of them are goal line options. Singletary's been very inconsistent this season. However, it's a fantastic matchup. You're expecting a lot of points here. And who knows, maybe one of these coaching staffs take a approach to keep the ball out of the other team's hands and decides to run it a bit more. So total, conjecture there and just projection-based nonsense. But at the end of the day, it is really a player just playing in a phenomenal offense with the shot to score a fluky touchdown here. This is the type of game you see those things happen. So that upside alone gets him into the bubble running backs 2 category. Alrighty, here then to round things out today in our RB3 tier for today's episode. Kareem Hunt, our running back 25 for today. So we perfectly cut that off at the 24 marker there. Look, this is a guy that doesn't have too much of a ceiling with Nick Chubb in the lineup. We've seen a lot less touchdown vulturing from Hunt here this season than we did last season on a per-game basis. Now, he did get one last week, and that's, what the nature of the beast is here for him. If he catches a high volume of passes, he has a chance to be a top 24 player. If he doesn't, he needs to score a touchdown. If he doesn't do either of those things, he's an RB3 here and thus falling into today's tier. Ezekiel Elliott against Philadelphia here. Look, this is a tough defensive line. Arguably arguably the most difficult matchup for the Cowboys this season for an inefficient running back, an offense that's barely scoring 20 points a game under Cooper Rush. They had 22 points this past week. However, their offense did not score all of those. There was a defensive touchdown and a blocked field goal, or excuse me, a blocked punt in Cowboy territory by Dallas's defensive unit. So I think the opportunities to score for Dallas are going to be kind of stingy this week. Zeke and that offense haven't found themselves in too many goal-to-go situations with the run game. And look, like I said, not super efficient. Tony Pollard is the more explosive player on this offense. And again, that makes Zeke very TD dependent here. A.J. Dillon versus the Jets. Now, look, he's coming off his lowest snap count percentage game of the season this past week. He needs touchdown production or a high level of efficiency in the passing game. He hasn't been getting that as of late, and as a result, he falls down into this tier. Again, both him and Aaron Jones I'm a little bit down on right now because of the overall productivity of that Packers offense. Cam Akers here, remember they are 22nd in the league in scoring. Cam Akers here versus Carolina. How about this stat for you guys? It's going to be like I talked about earlier with Christian McCaffrey, kind of a corner TV game, a boring contest, should be just a sloppy offensive disaster. Defenses will be thriving here. But how about this stat? Cam Akers has below 3 yards per carry in 4 out of his 5 games this year. That is nuts. One of them, he literally had 0 yards rushing, that being week 1 where he barely saw the field. So, boo-hoo Cam Akers. This has been a tough season to deal with him as a 4th-round pick in leagues. Eno Benjamin here, 29th ranked player of the week at the running back position. Now, Eno could either soar up the rankings here. This is a thing to definitely consider. So hopefully those of you guys wondering about Eno can get your answers to this question and see this in today's episode. He soars up the rankings the second that James Conner gets ruled out for this contest. That's the thing keeping him behind here. James Conner and Darrell Williams got banged up this past week, and the team went out and signed Corey Clement off the waiver wire to their practice squad. So it looks like Eno could be the lead dog against a very weak 31st ranked Seattle scoring defense. Very bad against the run and pass games, of course. That contributes to that terrible scoring margin there. So for Benjamin, he's going to be a 3-down back for this team, hopefully, in the event Conner's gone. If not, James Conner will move back up the rankings, so I actually have ranked like 33rd or 34th for the week. Barely misses the cut, but again, health is his concern. If not, this is one of the better matchups of the season. The Conner thankfully gets twice a year. And then Tony Pollard here against Philadelphia, the last player on the list, the 30 ranked player overall at the running back position for us. He's explosive, he's efficient, he's probably the best Dallas Cowboys running back today. However, that is not equating to a higher touch count or snap count percentage that Ezekiel Elliott's getting, in plain and simple. That's kind of things are going to come down to here. So if he rips a couple big runs early in this game, he's probably in for a big one, going to have an efficient day, but it's just hard to project, especially in a tough matchup like this one, that's going to be the case with Philadelphia's defensive line in a standalone Sunday Night Football primetime game with Cooper Rush, all the marbles pushed to the center of the table, Dak Prescott, all the drama going on in Dallas this week. So there you guys have it, my top 30 running back tiers and rankings for Week 6 fantasy football. If you enjoyed, smash the like button before you head on out of today's episode, and check out sizzlefantasy.com again for just over $1 a week. You guys can check out my rest of season bi-weekly rankings again. We did post those in week 5, so I'll be updating them here in week 7. And then we've also got our weekly positional rankings for lineups, which tells you my thoughts on every individual situation from 1 to 48 for running backs and receivers, 1 to 32 for quarterbacks and tight ends, and 1 to 32 for defenses as well. So check all that stuff out. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that great stuff. And I'll see you, of course, ask your questions down below as well if you have them still for Week 6. And I will see you in the wide receivers episode portion if you haven't checked that out already, or another video, which you're about to see right now, suggested by YouTube. Peace out.